Joining us now to talk about the aid for Ukraine inside that big funding bill just unveiled in Congress, as well as all the other spending, Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana. He's a member of the Appropriations Committee. Senator, not all Republicans are created equal here. This is going to probably pass, isn't it? Even though it could be done next year. And some Republicans would like to do it that way. What's going to happen?
I think Senator McConnell has his votes. Since the 1950s, Joe, we've had about 10 periods of disinflation in America. We have never achieved disinflation without the Federal Reserve working with Congress, demonstrating fiscal restraint. So my objective in this budget, in addition to not shutting down government, is to try to reduce the rate of growth in spending, and debt accumulation as much as I possibly can to help the Federal Reserve. I've been given two choices. Door number one is the current budget proposal. It's put together by Senator McConnell, Senator Schumer, Speaker Pelosi. It's about 133%. No, strike that. It's about a 33% increase over pre-pandemic spending. The three people who put it together say it's the best they can do. But there's a door number two. Door number two is to wait for a Republican House of Representatives and allow the House Republicans to put together a bill as a starting point. Now, you don't, basically that would substitute McCarthy for Pelosi in terms of putting together a budget bill. You don't have to be a senior at Caltech to figure out if your objective is fiscal restraint. You're better off with McCarthy than Pelosi. But a lot of senators have argued that, well, the House will never put together a budget. We look at it over there. I'm not saying I agree with this, but they said we look at the House right now, the House Republicans. It looks like a ferret fire drill. They can't even elect a speaker. They'll never put together a budget. We need to go with the budget that McConnell and Schumer and Pelosi put together. To me, that's a very cynical point of view. I'm going to vote to wait and give the House Republicans a crack at it. And, of course, there are a lot of... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, no punches pulled. I guess you might expect it from the Wall Street Journal, but the ugliest omnibus bill ever. The Republicans are pointing to the defense bill, or what's in there as far as defense, and they like that, and the discretionary is down, but there's even arguments about that. Do we know what's in the bill? It's 4,200 pages, give or take. Is this another instance of we'll find out after we pass it? That's no way to do things. How does it keep happening?
Yes, we don't know what's in it, and yes, we'll have to find out later. My staff we are going through it right now, but it's 4,000 pages. There was reporting last night, for example, that the bill contains, I think, $400 million to help Jordan, the country of Jordan, secure its border. One could marshal a pretty persuasive argument that that's a pretty dumb thing to do. But look, I have colleagues on the Republican side as well as the Democratic side of the Senate that they don't think the spending makes any difference in terms of inflation. It makes them rapturously happy to spend money. If they ran out of money, they'd be happy to slap a second mortgage or a reverse mortgage on Alaska and keep spending. They think that the fiscal side has nothing to do with inflation, and I just don't agree with them. I think to put out this fire of inflation, we're going to have to attack it on the monetary side, which Mr. Powell is doing a pretty good job of it, causing pain, but that's his job. And we're going to have to reduce the rate of growth of spending and debt accumulation by Congress. But I think I'm in a minority on that.
Let me ask you, Senator, you saw when the UK, the very short-lived Prime Minister tried to do some supply side issues. Do Republicans still think the supply side can be helpful here, less regulation? There's probably no stomach for cutting taxes anywhere. Everybody wants to raise taxes on corporations. But If you add to, it's not spending, but it adds to the deficit, theoretically, when you cut taxes. Should we still be doing those things, or what do we just shouldn't do anything? No spending and raise taxes?
No, I think we need to look at the supply side. You have to be reasonable about it. What happened in the UK is not demonstrative, in my opinion, of supply side economics. They never gave their new prime minister a chance, and the establishment, particularly the financial establishment, the Federal Reserve in the UK, sort of torpedoed her plans. I'm not saying they would have worked, but the point is we'll never know. We do need to look at the supply side, particularly if we're headed into a deeper recession. We need to look at curbing regulation. We need to look at selectively extending some of the provisions of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. But in doing that, I don't want to mislead your viewers, Joe. We're swimming upstream, because I would say, I don't want to be too critical, but we have a lot of big government Republicans, and we have a lot of Ritz-Carlton Democrats in this Congress. And most of them don't believe that the spending makes any difference in terms of America's economy and our attempt to reduce inflation. Now, I don't agree with them. I think those who believe that were probably in the quad playing Frisbee during Econ 101, but we're going to find out, because I think this budget that they put together is going to pass.
So you can actually point to the last 2 years, let's say, where before the Fed, when the Fed thought inflation was transitory, they kind of enabled all the fiscal spending. Is it fair to say that they were kind of partners in crime with Congress in terms of enabling? Because you got to keep rates low if you're going to service the debt. But that comes home to roost, and I don't know, what does that do as far as crowding out in terms of future growth over the next 3, 4, 5 years when we have $31 trillion with interest rates going up? I mean, now it's coming home to roost.
Well, it's true that we had there for a while a team transitory inflation. And it's true that Chairman Powell remained silent when Congress spent all this money, particularly President Biden's American Rescue Plan. I understand the position Chairman Powell was in. He was up for reappointment. I wanted him to be reappointed because I knew, first, I think Powell did a pretty good job of getting us through the meltdown from the pandemic, particularly with his currency swap lines, but also because I wanted Powell reappointed because I knew the alternative would be worse. But I will give this to the chairman. Now that he's in permanently, he's doing what he has to do to curb inflation. But what's he doing, Joe? He's raising interest rates. He's trying to slow the economy. Well, what does that mean? How do you measure that? You measure that in unemployment. Basically, what Chairman Powell is doing is trying to put people out of work. That's his job. I'm not being critical. And in order to get control of this inflation, he's going to have to put maybe 6 million to 10 million or more Americans out of work.
Right.
Particularly if Congress doesn't help him. If Congress doesn't curb the stimulus of our spending, he's got to raise rates that much higher and put more people out of work. And that's the sad circumstance we find ourselves in. It can be fixed, but we're going to have some people be born again in terms of how much money we can spend around here.
All right, Senator. They tell me we got to go, but I don't know whether you got a post-mortem on this this most recent election and how to avoid, with everything that the Republicans had going in terms of, I mean, take your pick, whether it was inflation or crime or the border or, I mean, take your pick, and still snatch, not defeat from the jaws of victory, but it certainly was not a red wave. It wasn't even a red trickle. How do Republicans avoid that in 2024? What did we learn?
Well, here's what the
Republicans learn.
Here's what I learned. The American people looked at all of us in Washington and said, a pox on both of your houses. They took the House of Representatives away from President Biden. It certainly wasn't an endorsement of Biden. But they didn't give Republicans any more power. In fact, they gave us less in the Senate. And the American people right now want divided government. They don't have a lot of confidence in either side. I learned that, plus I also learned that you can't poll the American people right now. There's a substantial number of Americans who are just not going to answer a poll. Truthfully, this is like the third election cycle where the polls have been wrong.
Okay. All right, Senator, hope to see you again, and have a great holiday break, and Merry Christmas,
Thanks,
Happy
Joe.
Holiday. All right, Happy New Year.
You
We're
too,
all
man.
gonna